Hi, I'm Jonathan Cloud, Executive Director of Possible Planet and the Center for Regenerative Community Solutions. And I'm here today to share a little bit about our 2022 annual report because it's got a lot of interesting information in it. And I'm planning to do this fairly quickly. So I hope it will be of value to you. A lot of the report is self-explanatory, but there are some things that a lot of people probably would not be familiar with. So first thing I'm going to do is share my screen with the PowerPoint. And we're going to start from here. So, first of all, this quote from Dee Hock, which is maybe a little wry humor, but I think can be taken quite literally. That we are facing many difficult challenges. People are now talking about calling it the poly crisis. And but we cannot afford to be discouraged by it. Human beings have always shown that they can overcome extraordinary challenges. And so this is the hero's journey of our time, is to overcome these challenges. So I'm going to move the thing forward. So here's the table of contents, and I'm not going to go through it all, but I wanted to let you know that you can download this PowerPoint and open it up and run through it. And it has not only all this list of things as the contents, but also some key highlights that I think you'll find interesting. And the photo on the right is a photo of a ceremony related to restoring the river in Barichara, Colombia, with children and I don't know if they call him a shaman or a medicine man, but someone with, the experience and the passion to lead the children in this dance. And then the diagram below is a diagram of the economic development ecosystem using PACE financing, which is property assessed clean energy. And we'll be talking about a little bit more as we go along, because this is the area where we've been focusing for the last dozen years or so. So first of all, let me show this introduction, which is not something, it's just something that caught my eye and really appealed because it has lots of energy, water, green stuff, and kind of expresses part of my thinking about what my heart's desire might be, even though it's a little more modernistic perhaps than a lot of people might be comfortable with. But the purpose of this slide is to point out how Center for Regenerative Community Solutions, which was our originally incorporated nonprofit and still called that, decided to create Possible Planet and New Jersey PACE and regenerative financing, and most recently Possible Rochester, and is also the fiscal sponsor for a half dozen external projects. So this is really what we consider the mothership. And I'm not going to read the stuff on the slide, but just to, a little bit tongue in cheek here. The key things are the blue marble view of the Earth, which really has given people, since it was it was able to be photographed from outer space, a real sense of both how precious and how fragile our planet really is, with its atmosphere, which is relatively thin compared to the surface of the Earth, and the fact that we are situated against the great blackness of space. Obviously, the other things, the mothership logo from the album, and the fanciful spaceship are just that fanciful. But here's the key to what we're about, which is building the world we know is possible rather than trying to fix the one we've inherited. Now, to some extent, we're doing both, really, because we are fixing the world that we've inherited. But the point is not to get trapped in the fights with the old, in the conflict with institutions that at this point we cannot overcome. But to begin building an alternative model, as Buckminster Fuller said, that will attract people and have people migrating to this better model rather than clinging on to the institutions of the past. So what we are about and have been about since the beginning of our organization is restoring the earth, regenerating community, building eco-villages, and creating place-based economies. Now, the Center for Regenerative Community Solutions is, again, a little fancifully, I'm calling it the grandmothership. But it was the first thing that we registered. We were perhaps a little ahead of our time in using the word regenerative. Most people at that point didn't seem to know what it meant. And we were only really becoming aware of what it meant ourselves, because it has some very specific meanings in the context of the evolution of life. And at the same time, we find ourselves waking up into an environment where we have already passed 5 of the 7 or 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries. And consequently, we are en route to collapse. If not our entire species, then certainly many, many aspects of our civilization, which are simply unsustainable. And even if they were sustainable, they would not be optimal for the future of humanity. So we really see that we are at an incredible transition point. The things that have happened during the course of my life have been quite astonishing, the last 70 years or so. And the next 70 years, time will accelerate even further. And the hope is that we can create a world that's really more worthwhile than the current one. But this is just the technical or legal background, if you like, of our nonprofit organization. It was created in January of 2013. It was received its 501(c)(3) status in December of 2013. And really how we now see the Center for Regenerative Community Solutions as a kind of think tank or repository for the ideas and the perceptions and the perspectives that we've been developing. So it's not a website that we keep up to date, and it's not a conversation that we're engaged in a lot of the time, but it is an important foundational part of Possible Planet, which is what we focus on. So, and one of the immediate offshoots of CRCS was New Jersey PACE. And this is a long and not altogether happy history, I must say, because it took us so long to get this in place. But when we started with the idea that the PACE financing, property assessed clean energy financing, could help restore a lot of places in New Jersey that had suffered during Superstorm Sandy, and it could help restore them in a better way. There's always this talk about build back better. Well, first thing that happened is that we were not able to get this through and signed by the then Governor Christie. And so we kept kind of beating our head against the wall for, as I say, the whole term of his administration, without being able to get a PACE program going in the state of New Jersey. Finally, under Governor Murphy, even though the pandemic intervened and there were many other priorities, PACE legislation was passed and signed in August of 2021. And we are currently now waiting for the New Jersey Economic Development Authority to issue guidelines and regulations so that the program can begin in earnest in the state. And we've been putting in place a lot of anticipatory structures that we think will help us and help others to create a robust industry and to use this approach to really conserve energy and help us get to reduction, 50 to 52% reduction in emissions by 2030, which is now the national goal. So we'll come back to this if it's relevant, but right now, suffice it to say that what we see ourselves doing is becoming a community engagement partner to the state of New Jersey to assist in the rollout of this program. Because as we know from the experience in other states, this is not going to happen by itself. It's likely that the very largest buildings can be upgraded using PACE, and that would be of interest to the large-scale financiers who are behind the industry, the insurance companies and pension funds. But we're interested in seeing PACE get used for small to medium-sized businesses, for smaller projects, and ultimately to bring it to the residential level. Because if we're really going to reduce our emissions by that amount, you can think of it as taking 50% of all buildings in the country to net zero, and that would reduce the emissions by 50% from this sector. Or you could think of it as taking all of the buildings and making them 50% more efficient than they are today. And if you think about that, that is a truly monumental task with hundreds of millions of buildings actually existing. So also PACE is important in the case of new development as well. Although that really ought to be a lot better controlled than it is at this point. So moving on, this was a picture that we thought would be fun to include. This is a picture of the board of directors of the Mid-Atlantic Solar and Storage Industry Association. And right there in the middle is our finance director, Gus Escher. And as we say, we're always striving to be at the center of things. He has been active as a member of this board for a number of years, and the industry association has really been the key to both the success of the New Jersey solar industry and to fighting a rearguard action when the policies change to make it less successful. So they are still fighting a good fight, and so are we. And we hope that this coming year will be the year when we can really show that CPACE can make a huge difference in growing this industry. Now, there's some technical difficulties there as well. But, you know, as far as the money is concerned, that's where we think there's over $800 billion of money sitting on the sidelines waiting to be invested in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And that's part of what we want to bring to the table. So let's move on to the next slide. And so this is the more general entity that we created after working on New Jersey PACE and after becoming a little frustrated at the amount of time that it was taking for us to get there. And that was, we began to do some work with Prudential Financial on an alternative to PACE where PACE wasn't available. And when we felt that we had gotten to a point that we could talk about it, and the alternative model is called NICE financing, or New Intercreditor Clean Energy Financing. We really wanted to broaden it out from PACE, because this is not PACE, although it mimics PACE in many respects. And so we registered regenerative financing as a DBA for Possible Planet and CRCS, and put together a website, which folks are welcome to visit, talking about these alternative approaches to financing clean energy projects. Now, the reality is we have not done these yet, although it seems like we will have an opportunity to very soon. And in the meantime, the whole area of regenerative financing has been transformed by the advent of cryptocurrency and the blockchain and the development of DeFi, or decentralized finance. And now refi, which is not about refinancing your mortgage, but is about refinancing really the regeneration of the earth, using cryptocurrencies and using a blockchain, which has some issues associated with it, but in the context in which we're using it, and we invite people to look at a lot of the stuff that's being written and narrated about refi, to understand how refi and Web3 and cryptocurrencies can work together for the good of humanity, and not simply create speculative bubbles the way that Bitcoin has done in the past. So that's regenerative finance. And then we came to Rochester, and since we had decided finally that we were going to settle here, we created Possible Rochester, with a focus on decarbonizing buildings on the one hand, and that was aimed at the business community, so that's a .com, and on regenerating the bioregion in terms of the overall level of biodiversity and the use of carbon in the soil, and its extraction from the atmosphere by what they call nature-based solutions, which means trees and plants and vegetation like what you're looking at there. And this is a scene from University Avenue in Rochester. And the image at the above is a scene of a spectacular drone display on July 4th of, I believe, 2021, when we first arrived here. And of course, that is Victoria standing with the constable who will be making sure that people stay in line. So another aspect of PACE that we haven't mentioned, but is increasingly important for us, is what we call community PACE. And the idea here is that we can develop a model for using the PACE law as it stands, particularly in the state of New York, to create local programs, municipal programs that really can address the needs of the community, and not simply be there as a way of making money for the big boys and extracting it from the community once more. Instead, we propose to create municipally based programs, very local, very carefully overseen, that use local financial institutions wherever possible, keep the money local and keep the work local, but use this to really scale the opportunity, because we need to do roughly every year, we need to do about 10 times what has been done in the entire history of the PACE industry over the past 12 years. So that's the scale at which we intend to work. Now, on top of that, just kind of a little bit of fun. We acquired a house in Brighton, New York, which is one of the inner suburbs of Rochester. And we have been engaging in what I call lawn replacement therapy, which is transforming the lawn really into an area suitable for an orchard, for a vegetable garden, and for a space that's full of plants and life and food, and is really a demonstration of what permaculture can bring to a small quarter-acre plot in a typical suburban small house area. And so there's a little bit about how we got here, because people may be interested in knowing why we moved to Rochester. And the fact is, we had a house with 5 Airbnb guests in it in central New Jersey when we lived there. And when the pandemic started, we realized that that simply was not sustainable, because we had folks who were, compromised in terms of their health. And so we found places for them to move to that would be safer. We put our house up for sale, and we bought a 32-foot RV, which we had intended to outfit as a transformational vehicle and drive around the United States. Well, and this was the design, what you see in the lower left there, that was put together for us by a volunteer from Catch a Fire. But when we got to Rochester, we realized that this idea of doing a cross-country tour at this time in a bus that, really used gasoline at the rate of 8 miles to the gallon was not what would make any sense under the circumstances. And so we decided that we needed to stay here, since Rochester already had CPACE, and it turned out the county of Monroe was getting it. So we thought, an open opportunity to work here and bring the expertise that we've developed. And then also on a personal level, when we found a house that we were, really thrilled with, we engaged a permaculture designer to help us create a permaculture garden and a food forest and a vegetable garden. And so this is how we went about preparing the land to do that. A little bit dramatic, calling it killing the lawn, but really it amounted to putting down large sheets of cardboard, which we got mostly from dumpster diving behind appliance stores, trolling the neighborhood for leaf bags, and calling up landscaping companies and inviting them to drop off truckloads of wood chips rather than taking them to the dump. And so what used to be lawn is almost entirely covered in this way. And last spring, we planted fruit trees and vegetables and had a really half decent harvest on the vegetable side, and the trees are mostly surviving, and we will be adding to them this year. So moving right along here, talking about our sponsored projects. Our sponsored projects include Earth Regenerators, which is a 4,300 person network right now of activists and experts from around the world. For Barichara Ecoversity, which is the flagship project of Earth Regenerators in Barichara, Colombia, and the Bioregional Activators Group, which is in the process of being transformed into a design school for Earth regeneration. We are the U.S. fiscal sponsor for these projects, for a project in the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica called the Regenerosa Colectiva. And earlier on, but still continuing, are Eco Village NJ and the Eco Villagers Alliance, which are all projects that are consistent with our overall philosophy and objectives, and which are simply utilizing our capacity as a 501c3 to support their group's work. And we intend to continue doing that. So in particular, the projects in Colombia have been very exciting this year because for a number of different reasons, the programs there were started by Joe Brewer, who published a book called The Design Pathway for Regenerating Earth. And as a result of that, established a study group, which has now turned into this global network and has led to the purchase of land in Barichara for the purpose of restoring the local rivers and for the purpose of creating an ecoversity and supporting bioregional activities all over literally a 1 million acre landscape territorial area. That's the intention, and that's the work that's currently being done on it. Now, part of what the earth regenerators are all about is what we call the gift economy. It's a little bit different from what people thought of as the gift economy in the anthropological sense. But, and I'm going to play the little video that's embedded, which is a very fast 4-minute, 5-minute video from TED about what a gift economy is. And we have found our own ways to implement this, specifically in the context of earth regenerators. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on the other side of the video.
This holiday season, people around the world will give and receive presents. You might even get a knitted sweater from an aunt. But what if instead of saying thanks before consigning it to the closet, the polite response expected from you was to show up at her house in a week with a better gift? Or to vote for her in the town election? Or let her adopt your firstborn child? All of these things might not sound so strange if you are involved in a gift economy. This phrase might seem contradictory. After all, isn't a gift given for free? But in a gift economy, gifts given without explicit conditions are used to foster a system of social ties and obligations. While the market economies we know are formed by relationships between the things being traded, a gift economy consists of the relationships between the people doing the trading. Gift economies have existed throughout human history. The first studies of the concept came from anthropologists Bronislaw Malinowski and Marcel Mauss, who described the natives of the Trobriand Islands making dangerous canoe journeys across miles of ocean to exchange shell necklaces and armbands. The items traded through this process, known as the kula ring, have no practical use, but derive importance from their original owners and carry an obligation to continue the exchange. Other gift economies may involve useful items, such as the potlatch feasts of the Pacific Northwest, where chiefs compete for prestige by giving away livestock and blankets. We might say that instead of accumulating material wealth, participants in a gift economy use it to accumulate social wealth. Though some instances of gift economies may resemble barter, the difference is that the original gift is given without any preconditions or haggling. Instead, the social norm of reciprocity obligates recipients to voluntarily return the favor. But the rules for how and when to do so vary between cultures, and the return on a gift can take many forms. A powerful chief giving livestock to a poor man may not expect goods in return, but gains social prestige at the debtor's expense. And among the Toraja people of Indonesia, the status gained from gift ceremonies even determines land ownership. The key is to keep the gift cycle going, with someone always indebted to someone else. Repaying a gift immediately, or with something of exactly equal value, may be read as ending the social relationship. So, are gift economies exclusive to small-scale societies outside the industrialized world? Not quite. For one thing, even in these cultures, gift economies function alongside a market system for other exchanges. And when we think about it, parts of our own societies work in similar ways. Communal spaces, such as Burning Man, operate as a mix of barter and a gift economy, where selling things for money is strictly taboo. In art and technology, gift economies are emerging as an alternative to intellectual property, where artists, musicians, and open source developers distribute their creative works not for financial profit, but to raise their social profile or establish their community role. And even potluck dinners and holiday gift traditions involve some degree of reciprocity and social norms. We might wonder if a gift is truly a gift if it comes with obligations or involves some social payoff. But this is missing the point. Our idea of a free gift without social obligations prevails only if we already think of everything in market terms. And in a commercialized world, the idea of strengthening bonds through giving and reciprocity may not be such a bad thing, wherever you may live.
So that's definitely one perspective on the gift economy. It's not the only one, and there might be some things in there that you might want to quibble about, such as the idea that someone who gives a gift to someone else acquires prestige at the recipient's expense. Whereas in fact, an essential element of the gift economy is that it's based around the idea of abundance and the idea of win-win solutions, as opposed to win-lose solutions. So, there's obviously things that we could criticize a little bit about, but the essence of it is about resourcing people and projects that benefit the planet and the community. And this little quote from Charles Eisenstein: the gift economy represents a shift from consumption to contribution, transaction to trust, scarcity to abundance, and isolation to community. And so one of the topics that we talk about in Earth Regenerators on a weekly basis is about the gift economy and how we can make our community activities more closely aligned with gifting and caring and moving away from the transactional nature of the modern economy. Okay. One way in which we're doing that is a project called Vivero. And this project was developed by Rachel Olson originally as a way of fundraising for the work of Earth Regenerators. And it has evolved and grown into a unique giving platform that allows people to pool their resources and use them essentially to seed fund the activities of other members of the network. And it has some very interesting applications, not only in Earth Regenerators, but more broadly in communities that are interested in pursuing the opportunity for mutual aid, cooperatives, eco-villages, all kinds of organizations that may find it useful to use this kind of an app to consolidate contributions, to recognize contributors and beneficiaries, and to essentially begin to get more of a sense of the collective intelligence about using how we use money and resources to make choices and decisions in the world. Moving right along in that vein, there are some very interesting things that are happening in the world of cryptocurrency and Web3. And here's a quote from Gitcoin. And Gitcoin, for those not familiar with it, is a platform that is used for grant making. The good news is that there is a new world, Web3, and everyone's invited. This futuristic upgrade of the internet uses blockchain, cryptocurrency, smart contracts, and NFTs to put ownership and control back into the hands of the users. Web3 is remodeling the internet by building on open source technologies that put the user's needs at the forefront. And essentially what this is saying is that we can liberate ourselves from the overground economy, from the institutional economy, which is dominated by the world of finance and debt-based money issuance. And we can begin to build a separate and parallel economy that uses very different principles and engages people in a very different way. And this is all happening in terms of the region, the work of the Regen Network and the Regen Foundation, and the evolution of decentralized autonomous organizations and their connection with the cryptocurrency world, which again is not something that we're trying to promote in and of itself, because it can, like any other technology, can easily be misused, but that we are seeking to use specifically for the purposes of stewarding the earth and for taking care of the needs of its citizens and its non-human relatives. So again, in connection with all of this, we've seen that the future is bioregional. And so we have issued a call for bioregional collaboration in the Great Lakes region. And our intention is to do what Joe Brewer calls activating the bioregion by connecting together many of the regenerative projects that are being done throughout the bioregion and in much smaller regions as well, and providing ways for them to collaborate and to source their funding together. And this is now taking shape in the form of a visit by Joe Brewer and Penny Heipel to the Great Lakes region, to Cleveland, to Ithaca, and to Rochester, as well as to Toronto, to talk about this new approach to bioregional regeneration. Here are some of the other projects that we have fiscally sponsored in the past, and ones that we are taking on in the future. So in the past, we were the fiscal sponsor for a project called Global 4C, now known as the Global Carbon Reward, which was developed by Dr. Delton Chen and featured in the science fiction novel, The Ministry for the Future, by Kim Stanley Robinson. And so if you're not familiar with the idea of a carbon coin or how carbon credits might be conceivably used in a more effective and holistic way throughout the world, very much worth reading that story and taking a look at some of the work that Dr. Chen has been doing for a decade now. And the first part of that, we were the singular support in the US for this work, and helped to get it published and recognized at places like MIT, and it helped Delton to develop the foundation to move on and go for things that are bigger and better at the international and international finance level. So that's one of the things that we're very proud of. And these other projects, which you can see depicted here, are mostly projects about communal, not necessarily communal living, but community living and communitarianism, and have a lot to offer. So any one of these can be Googled, and except possibly for TREED, which is a new project that's being developed in West Virginia to create an eco-village there on some property that's owned by some folks that we know. Here's the status of our finances at the year end. And obviously these have already changed. We continue to receive and process funding, but as a snapshot, this is kind of typical of where we are. It shows that we generated revenue from regenerative financing and we generated grant funding into our own accounts, but we also generated grant funding into other accounts and donor funding. And that's the kind of thing where you can see that there is money available, not necessarily in huge quantities, but the fact is, as soon as the money is brought in, our intention is to see it put to good use. So, and we are operating on a purely donation basis with regard to most of this fiscal sponsorship. Here's the team. Myself, our Director of Finance, Gus Escher, and my beautiful wife, Victoria Zellen Cloud, co-founder, Director of Development. She and I have been married and have been together for close to 40 years now. And we have been working together for the last dozen years, and very happily so. But apart from that, she had a long career in the corporate world, ending up finally at Deloitte in the business development area to do with sustainability, which proved to be, at the time, unsustainable. So she decided to jump out of there and start working with me. But because we are clearly not the next generation, but the previous one, we are looking for new members and of our team, and this could be you. If you're watching this video and if you have downloaded this PowerPoint to see what we're up to, if you feel called, get in touch with us and let's talk about working on any or all of the projects that we've been discussing here. And here's the timeline of what we have accomplished, starting in 2013 with our incorporation and receiving our 501c3 letter of determination, holding a PACE summit at Princeton University in 2015, really a national event with people from all over the country. We registered Possible Planet as a DBA in 2017. We registered Regenerative Financing in 2020. In 2021, we got the legislation passed in New Jersey for the PACE Act and signed by the governor, and subsequently received awards from PACE Nation for the work that we did to get this done. As of today, we are still waiting for the NJEDA's release of the regulations and guidelines for Garden State CPACE, and truthfully, they are more than a year late. And so we are currently in discussions around how we can help move that forward, how we can help make it a success when it finally is available, and what it's going to take to engage the community as a whole. And this is really not the end of the story. This is kind of a new beginning for us in some ways. And so there's many other things that we have in the works, and these are just a few of these. And what I would invite you to do is download the PowerPoint presentation and read through some of these things in more detail if they interest you. And lots more happening, so much that it's hard to keep up. And that's because there's a lot of things that need fixing on the planet. Here are the things that we are continuing to work on and are currently awaiting specific follow-ups. You can see, amongst other things, a city forestry initiative that we're working on with the city of Rochester and other local organizations here. And our goal is to invite you to think about your aspirations for the earth in the coming year. And if you are moved to reach out to us, to work with us, to contribute funding to us, we'd be very grateful to have you. And here, just for the purposes of the record, is our IRS determination letter showing our 501c3 status. Thank you for your attention, and I hope this has been of some value to you as a way of interpreting some of the work that we've done over the year 2022. And that's where I'm going to wrap it up.